us, how'd you come to Family First Life?
Yeah. Prior to insurance, my background was always what I'll loosely call some form of like business development position.
Okay.
I was in the construction industry, kind of building relationships to get projects. I actually worked in minor league and professional sports for a couple of years at different levels, doing like sponsorship stuff. But I ended up, longer story, I ended up moving, grew up in Connecticut, lived in Florida for about 6 years, ended up in Texas. And when my wife told me she was pregnant, I took a panic job at a bank, and just something that had, guaranteed income and, minimum benefits, basically.
Okay.
And working at the bank, they made us get our insurance license so we could start talking about annuities, pitch people to the financial advisor, all that stuff.
Sure.
So I got licensed, but never really used it for anything. And Rob Richmond, whose team I'm on here, and I met through friends of my wife, and he ended up actually opening accounts and being my client at the bank.
Oh, wow.
And we sort of became friends and never really talked business or anything. But I decided without a real plan in place that I was going to leave the bank and figure out where else was a better fit. And I called him to tell him, that I was going to leave. And if he was just keeping his accounts there because of me, he could basically go do whatever you want. Don't feel beholden. Dude pounced and took an opportunity to sucker me into having lunch with him the next day. And, I was like, oh, cool. Like Rob wants to hang out on a Tuesday, like, like this is great. And, I showed up in like shorts and the t-shirt. He showed up in a suit and gave me like the hard sell on how I was already licensed, go work with him doing insurance while, I kind of interviewed or figured out what my next move was. So I started working with him at a previous IMO in like August of however many years ago, and was kind of like, cool, like I'll do this through the holidays and, try and position myself start of the following year for, what I was thinking was a real job. And, kind of figured out that, working not as many hours as I was at the bank, I was making more.
Sure.
And just, dove in. And I've been doing insurance ever since. We transitioned together over to FFL. I want to say it's like 2.5, almost 3 years ago. Been here ever since.
That's what's up, man.
Yeah, that's how I ended up here.
Sure. So starting at that previous IMO, what was just as far as the switches between, obviously you guys came over to Family First Life together.
Right.
What kind of was appealing to you? Yeah. About Family First Life, having already been in the insurance industry.
Sure. So I was at the other IMO, I want to say a little over a year, I think closer to 1.5 years before we switched.
Okay.
Again, I'd never done what I would call like a direct sales job before. Right. So like going there was different. It was great in the sense that compared to the bank hours, right? Like, it's laughable compared to here, but like there, I hardly worked.
Sure.
Like the setup there was so different, right? Like I'd get leads, we'd call on Saturday to try to set up, Monday through Wednesday, and then we'd call Monday morning to try to set up, kind of the rest of, fill in the gaps, and if we could, set up for Thursday.
Okay.
I never ran appointments Friday or Saturday. A good week there was right in, 5,000 or something.
Okay.
It was like at the end of the month, if I'd written 10, 15, it was a solid month as a full-time agent.
Sure.
In regards to comp, like I started at a 60. If I wrote back-to-back months of 10,000, I got bumped to a 70. Back-to-back months of 15,000, I got bumped to 80.
Okay.
But then I was done, unless I was asked to move to another city and open another office for them.
Mm-hmm.
That was, that was capped.
Sure.
So I started there in like, let's basically call it September, and kind of figured my way out September, October, November, and just December. By, I don't know, like not even 6 months into the next year, I was already at 80%. So it was kind of lost the challenge. There was nowhere else to go from there. There wasn't really growth. They helped you. There's a lot of places out there that will tell you, they'll contribute to your lead cost.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not paying full cost, but what sounded nice, but they're also responsible for my leads. So like,
right.
If they got 30 leads for the Dallas office and there were 6 agents, we each got 5 of them,
Right. Right.
And we weren't really positioned to step outside of that to go find more. So when we got, I'll stop saying we. When I was pitched the idea of FFL, number one, I started at a higher comp, which was automatically worth it because, I'm going to get paid a higher percentage for my business.
Right.
Right. But for me, it was the leads and having full control over that.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I was spending more, I was still making more because at an 80% comp over there with less leads, you're limited. Over here at 100 and whatever percent comp. Even if I'm spending where I'm only making 80, I'm still ahead of the game.
Sure. So you had a really real ceiling that you hit pretty quick over there.
Pretty quick.
In more ways than one. In one, your comp, there was a big ceiling there. 2, there was a big ceiling when it came to your leads. And it seems like you're a pretty hard worker. I even kind of hear it in your voice. Like obviously you weren't upset with less work for more money, but it seems like the lack of challenge, the lack of progression.
It wasn't even
really.
Yeah. I wouldn't even say it was less work for more money, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was less work for less money. But at the time, it was less work for more money.
Oh yeah, right? That's what I'm saying. Coming from the baking industry.
Yeah, for sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 100%. So it wasn't really a challenge. There wasn't the growth opportunity there. The setup there was just like, you're gonna be doing this basically forever until you quit. They ask you to open an office or you die.
Right.
It wasn't really set up for you to make anything out of it. At least that's how I felt, right?
Sure. So coming to Family First Life, where it was unlimited leads, higher cost, obviously you saw like, okay, I can take this as big as I want. So what did that look like for you? Your first year here?
It's different. I think what I try to relay. Ivan was telling me most of the people on this call are on the newer side, right? So like, where I always try to be upfront with people, right, is like this is not having done this way for a year and a half to start my career. Like, this is not an industry where like you show up, you work a couple hours, you go sit by the pool,
right?
At least not at the beginning. That's not how it
Sure.
should be, because it's not going to last that way. You're not going to last that long if that's the setup. Mark Mead always laughs at me. Like, I was like, coming to FFL, like I had to put my big boy pants on.
Right.
Right. Like over there, like it was kind of like they were managing my business for me.
Sure.
Right. Hey, here's how many leads you have. Here's the cost. We're paying 1/8 of it. You're paying 7/8 of it, or whatever it was. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then, go out, book them, sell them, and make us all our money back.
Right.
Here, you've got to figure out sort of your structure. What do you want to spend, or what can you spend? How can you maximize that dollar? How do you make sure you're getting the most leads, right? I always tell people, like, it's the number of leads, not the kind of leads.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
You're better off with 100 something than 5 something else.
Right. Yeah. Just that's the law of large numbers. No, you're right, because we hear a lot. Every time, obviously having an agency, we're always looking at new lead vendors, and everyone wants to promise how great their leads are when we're looking at a new vendor and like, oh, these are really high quality, da, 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 da. And what we found is that leads are leads, honestly. Like
Dude,
for sure
100%.
there are some that will have a little bit higher quality than others, but as far as like a magic lead, like there, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I had this conversation with a newer agent like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, right?
Okay.
And they kept asking like, well, what leads are everyone running, or which ones are the best, or which ones are this or that? And I was like,
Mhm.
I was like, I'm not trying to be rude, but I was like, I really can't have another conversation about that. I was like, number one, what another agent is doing is irrelevant. It only matters what you're doing. I was like, but number two, like a mortgage protection mailer that costs $60, right, compared to an instant internet lead that costs $11, right? Like the immediate difference is the mortgage protection person filled it out by hand.
Right.
Right. As far as I'm concerned, the rest is the same, right? If you get the mortgage protection person on the phone, there's a 50-50 chance you're setting an appointment.
Mm-hmm.
If you get the internet person on the phone, there's a 50-50 chance you're setting an appointment. If you get in front of them, there's only two options. They're either buying something or they're not.
Right.
Like it's all the same. And we can make up in our mind, make us feel better about something, right? Like which one's a higher intent, or which one's going to give you the better chance, or this or that. But I just look at it as like, it's the same chance.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
It's just about how you approach it, how you present it, how you're working that call, or door knock, or whatever it is.
Sure. No, I agree. So Jesse, so you got here. What year did you come to FFL?
March 2019, I think.
March 2019. Okay. What did you do? So that was a switch. You're coming in, you're taking your business in your own hands and your own words, put your big boy pants on. What was your first year like from March to the end of the year 2019?
So I think so that's basically 10 months. I think my first 10 months I did somewhere around 160.
Okay.
2020 was my first like full year here.
Mm-hmm.
I finished on paper, I think they tracked me at like 316.
Oh, wow.
So almost double.
Yeah. So let's get right into that, dude, because obviously you learned a ton that first year and then applied it in 2020. What would you say for a lot of the new agents here coming to this industry new? What was the big change for you from your first year here to the second year? Because that's huge.
Yeah, I mean, number one, I would say structure. Number two, I ironed out a lot of like my approach to leads, right? Okay. I mean, some of this is not going to be accurate because I'm just kind of trying to remember, but like one of my first 3 months, I don't remember if it was my first month, my third month, whatever, but like one of those months, I did like 36,000. And I was running mostly final expense internet.
Okay.
We didn't have the instance yet. I was doing stuff like EverQuote and some other things that I think kind of we tended to shy away from now, find some better quality. Right. So like, the good news is I wrote like 36,000. The bad news is I can't promise you I made a profit.
Oh wow.
Right. I just wasn't, or if I did, it didn't feel like it, right? Like I was kind of just throwing like everything at everything, right?
Okay.
Instead of taking the slow approach to figure it out, I was sort of like, same way I panicked and took the bank job when my wife said baby, right? Like I just panicked and I was like, holy shit, there's so many leads. Like, let me just go get everything and I'll figure it out. Right. What I've sort of quickly learned, and since I've focused with my agents on, right, is like take the time to talk to your upline or whoever, and make an actual plan before you spend $1.
Sure.
Right. Because since then I figured out I now have a monthly budget. I know what my returns should be. Right. I'm experienced enough now that I understand where I should end up at. on any given month. So I know sort of what my expectations should be, what my expenditure should be, so on and so forth. But like a big part was just ironing out my lead sources, right? Making sure that I was balanced with whatever mortgage, internet, other stuff that I had, so that I had a consistent flow.
Mhm.
And then honestly, just schedule. I mean, big change. I mean, so things specifically changed between the 2 years. I had one kid the first year. So my wife and I were able to sort of trade back and forth, and it was just, figuring out that balance. Year 2, we already had it figured out. But last year was COVID, and I still doubled.
Right. But now, also obviously you figured out a lot about, in your own words, your plans, your structure, how you deal with leads. So for now being a veteran agent, not just with Family First Life, but also in the insurance industry, explain people what your plan is now. What's your budget? What's your diversity of leads look like, and what are
Sure.
you looking? What kind of return are you looking for every month?
Yeah. So let me back into answering that question and be clear for the people on the call. Like this year, to date, I've averaged my full July back to January. My average month has me at 30,000 a month. I've had some that are more, some that are less, but that's my average. So
Sure.
I'm spending about two grand-ish a week.
Okay.
I'm doing mostly, I spend a lot of that on mortgage mailers.
Okay.
I'm buying pretty much any second chance mortgage lead that's in the CRM within driving distance.
Okay.
I personally, if I'm running like Final Expense or internet ones, I'll use companies like Game Time or someone like the Direct. They set up the specific campaign for you. There's so many agents here in Dallas that the
Right.
instincts are not usually in high supply.
Sure.
At least, not on the days you're probably looking for them.
Right.
So, writing 30 means I'm probably getting paid somewhere between 20 and 25. If I'm paying, on average 2 a week, net 8 off that, which means, my income is somewhere between 10 and 15.
Right.
On the low side.
Sure. So that's pretty healthy. So you do have a pretty good breakdown. So obviously your area is pretty competitive. So you have to kind of get a lead flow where you're locked in with a certain vendor, because like you said, you can't go to the CRM every week just because of where you are. So
yeah. I mean, look, I'll admit, right, like as a seasoned agent, as a person that's been here for a little while, right, like my access to leads is going to be different from someone that's coming in brand new.
Sure.
Right. So like as a new agent, like you've got to find your niche. Right. Like admitting to everybody on here, like I don't buy a ton of internet leads because I'm in the position where I've been able to take control of a bunch of mortgage protection, which is all that I ran at Assure. We didn't do Final Expense. We were Sure was the previous company.
Sure.
Right. It was mortgage protection, nothing else.
Okay.
So like that's my comfort zone. That's my bread and butter. And like, could my P&L potentially be a little different in my favor if I were buying more internet stuff? Probably. But I supplement with those for sure. I mean, I got to do a little bit of everything.
Well, I think what you said is real powerful there, as far in helping new agents understand. Like you said, that conversation you had with that agent who was asking about certain types of leads is really telling. And as a manager, I get a lot of those same questions myself. And I feel like there's this feeling of new agents that there really is a magic lead or a best type of lead, or they hear about more like, oh, mortgage, that must be the best because you know a lot of big dogs, you know, are running those. But then, you know, I just I did a podcast interview with Jonah, I can't think, Lewis out here in Chicago, and that kid spent $10,000 on instant internet, on a mix of internet leads, and wrote almost 90,000 last
Yeah. And I think that, yeah,
month.
and to piggy, yeah, I mean, you know, God bless him.
Hmm.
You know, I think one of the things I would continue, like, to piggyback off that, right, is like, you know, I wasn't trying to be a jerk to that agent, right? When I was like, you know, let's not talk about what anyone else is doing, right? But it's
Right.
about a focus thing, right? Like, we're all under Ivy, right? Under Rob, like, Steve Giordano is on our team. Last
Hmm.
year, Steve wrote over $1 million himself,
Right.
right? Before Rob got out of the field, Rob wrote like 980 something, I think, or 950. So I can't remember what the number was, right?
Right.
Like, that's my direct upline, and another guy like constantly on the same leaderboard,
Hmm.
right? Like, I'm not writing $1 million a year,
Right.
right? And I have to be realistic about that, right? Like, I can't compete with that, right? But it doesn't mean I can't be the best version of what I can be, right?
Well, yeah, no, that's powerful. And it's also, you know, obviously a lot of us aren't willing to give that same amount that a lot of people. I mean, obviously speaking to Rob, we both know Rob's been in this for like 15 years. That
Yeah,
kid was like 20 calling people in the
yeah,
yellow pages. You know, like I don't have that kind of experience. Steve Giordano, that guy gets up at 4 o'clock every morning, you know, to go get ready and then works
for sure.
7 days a week. Like,
Here's the thing, and I talked to Steve pretty frequently, right? And like I think that's the thing, right? Is like, it's not a competition,
mhm,
right? You can take from someone else to push you and help drive you, but it's got to be internal, right? Like, kind of like you were saying, like, I'm not getting up at 4 a.m. going to the gym, doing whatever the hell Steve does, you know, and you know, 12 months later at $1 million a year,
right.
right? But I think that I give everything that I'm capable of giving to this, right? And I have to be realistic and comfortable with the fact that it's not $1 million a year, right? But I'm still chasing more, right? I want more than what I did last year,
Right.
right? I want more than next year. I want more than what I did this year,
Yeah.
and so on, right? But it's a competition with myself,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
And that's what
And,
you need here. You can't be dragged along by what someone else is doing. You got to push yourself to what you can do.
well, yeah, and also to follow your own progression and your skill level, and not when we compare ourselves to someone else, you know, we are discrediting our own skill level and where we're coming from. Like for instance, like what Steve Giordano has done, just to highlight him, obviously is incredible. But you know, following Jonathan Porcina, who writes, you know, just about as much as Steve, you know,
Yep.
that guy has much more of a journey that I would see myself having to write 1 million a year. You know, because I asked him about, we're at the tri-state office, and the guy's like, yeah, you know, my first year with insurance, he's like, I think I wrote like 250,000. And then the next year I wrote 300 something. And then that third year, I finally hit Hall of Fame. And then after that, I did like a 500,000. After that, I did like 600. After that, I
Yep.
did 8. And then after that, I hit 1 million. You know, it
Right.
was just that constant improvement year
For sure.
after year, not based off what anyone else was doing, but him just being better than the person he was before. And hey, some of us might be really blessed. We might be the Michael Jordan or whoever of the insurance industry. And in 2, 3 years, maybe you can hit the very top tiers like a Steve Giordano. But if you don't, that doesn't mean you're any less. And hey, maybe your skills are somewhere else, because obviously Nick Ayala, you know, 3 years into the industry, he had never hit Hall of Fame, but he had a multi-million dollar agency.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and to take that comment and go back to your question, right, about like sort of what led me over here and what was the setup, right? Like, so we already talked about the comp and the control of the leads, right?
Mhm.
But same thing over here. Like, it's easier. I mean, building is hard. I mean, you guys are doing a great job. To be honest, I should come to your office and figure out what you guys are doing. But right, but like here, you can start building from day one. Right, I didn't have to be at 80% to go move somewhere and open an office. Like,
Right.
you don't need an office to build a team here.
Right.
You don't need to be at a specific comp level to build a team here.
Right.
And I think that's kind of that same thing where you were saying, like, using Nick or hell, you guys, right? I mean, you guys started here way after me, and the size of your team's, way larger than mine. You guys have a different skill set or whatever you're phrasing, whatever you want to call it, you're making it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're producing or not, you're making that part happen, and you're also producing. Like, there's kind of a fit for everybody here, as long as you can nail down your niche.
Well, yeah, I mean, niche, and that's a great word, because we're all blessed, but we're blessed in different ways. We're not all going to be, and if we always focus on what someone else is good at, I feel like personally, it's always going to hold us back from focusing on what we are good at, because you might have a completely different skill set that I would never have. Like the what Steve does, like even Rob, like I remember thinking, like, even though Rob, and not to throw shade at Steve, but like I remember hearing Rob on the phone and seeing what he did in home and hearing about the numbers of appointments he would run to write what he did. I remember thinking he's got to be the best salesperson in the FFL, and he's probably one of the best ones I've ever seen. I was like, I can't compete with that. I really can't. And if I would try, I think I would just get discouraged. So let me focus on what I'm good at.
Yeah. I mean, welcome to my life in insurance.
Right.
I mean, I've been in the office with that guy since I started. Right. So that's where this lesson has been kind of beaten into me from the beginning. Like, I'm not Rob. Rob got married a couple months ago, and they asked me to say something nice about him, so it was a short speech. But but I was like, I mean, one of the things, as I was kind of thinking about what I wanted to say about him, like, he's one of the most likable people I've ever met. Right, and I think that, like, I think that, like, personality is something, like, your personality is what your personality is, right?
Sure.
You're good with people or you're not, right?
Sure.
But, like, in terms of, like, this job, right? Like, Rob is way more, for lack of a better term, way more aggressive of a salesperson than I am.
Sure.
Right. Coming into this, I was softer by nature. Right. But instead of trying to compete with him, which was unrealistic and would have, probably frustrated me, like, I took from him. So, like, the things that he was stronger at than me, right, I took from that to make myself stronger at it. Right. I'm not going to be Rob. I'm not going to be better than Rob. I have to do my own version of this.
Sure.
Right. But you can, and that's the thing, like, watching all these videos, talking to all agents here, right? Like, all of you new people, like, whoever you like on a video, really take from them. Right. It doesn't have to all be from Gabe, or it doesn't have to all be from Caleb or me or someone else, right? Like, you can take mix and match of how different people's approaches are and make your own. And as long as that's what you're comfortable with, like, that's how you get successful. Like,
100%.
When I first started at the other company, like, I'd walk in and be like, here are your options. Let me know what you want to do. Talk to you next week. Like, nice to meet you,
Right.
And eventually, whether it was Rob or whoever, like, I started to take, and I've just positioned it now, it's like, here are your options, pick one, let's fill it out, and I'll call you and let you know what happens if it's not an instant decision. Like,
right.
There's no maybe. A maybe is that you're choosing not to take it. So,
right.
Let's not mess around. I don't know. What else you want to talk about?
Well, hey, Jesse, you're a humble guy, but obviously you're gonna be hitting Hall of Fame this year. I think no problem.
We'll see.
Yeah. And what? Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say, I think the timing of this call is probably pretty good. You caught me where I'm having sort of a down, frustrating week. which is out of the normal. So to be open book and realistic with everybody, you know,
Sure.
like it happens to all of us,
Sure.
you know, like you're new, you're not the only one that'll have struggles. Like I'm 3.5 years into this industry, you know, or whatever. And most of the time I feel like I have it figured out, but there's still, you know, there's still things that's going to, you know, kick you in the pants. And it's just sort of you're finding your consistency and your stick-to-itiveness, and, you know, believe in sort of the plan and the guidance that you're setting up and just keep fighting through it. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think you're going to kind of ask, like, where do I see myself ending up? Is that where you were going with that?
Yeah.
I mean, going by the numbers, I mean, I'm still on track, I think, for about 360,
Okay.
which is my 30,000. So I'm trying to find that, you know, trying to find those extra things in there to start to, you know, bump that up. I might have to just, you know, I don't know, go park it if I'm led into the old folks homes now that maybe the virus has calmed down, you know, just go start signing everyone's grandparents up and find that extra 40K or something. But
well, hey, the fall's a big time for all of us, man. It always seems to
yeah,
pop off
no
a little
doubt.
bit over the next few months. So
Yeah, no doubt. So that's my goal. My goal at the beginning of the year was Hall of Fame and try and grow my team. You know, outside of my individual stuff. You know, Hall of Fame is within spitting distance, but I got to make some extra stuff happen, I think. Team's growing a little bit, you know.
Sure.
As you know, it's a different game.
Oh yeah, it's a different animal. It's a different grind, and it's less instant gratification. It's the whole deal. But well, man, Jesse, you given some real nuggets to people who are new on here. I mean, obviously you're a top producer. You know, you're doing 30,000 plus consistently over the last 2 years, and just helping people understand things that affect all of us. What's your team doing now? How many agents would you say that you have, and what are you doing around it as a team?
Any given month, we typically have about 11 writing agents.
Okay.
Right now, sometimes I think I've gone up to like 13 or 15 or something.
Okay.
Here and there. We're doing somewhere between like 150, 170.
Okay.
We're kind of top heavy. We've got sort of the same 4 or 5 people, or kind of maybe 120 of that.
Okay.
And then we've got some up and comers that are, you know, filling in the other 20, 30.
Sure. And that's always how it is. You know, I think it's that, what do they call it? The 80-20 rule. No matter where you get. That's why that first 300 is such a grind, man. I think everyone knows, and it's just so much work.
For sure. And I think you know, talking to my individual agents, right, is like, as long as someone is profitable, right? Like I want people to be happy with what their production is.
Sure.
Right. If they're not happy, talk to me. Let's figure out how to get you going. Right. If you're happy, I'm not going to sit here and yell at you. You know, it's not my job.
Right.
It's not my job to force you to do anything.
Sure.
Right. But I think this is a great opportunity for pretty much anybody can come in here and, you know, and make it happen. I mean, you've got the extreme of someone that's never done it before that can come in and maybe do, you know, 5-10K their first couple months and get rolling. Or for those of you that haven't, you know, we talk about Steve Giordano as like the top producer. Like, that guy started only like 4 months before I came over here. And he came like straight out of the restaurant business.
Right.
Like he was managing a Red Lobster.
Right.
And then just jumped into this and like skyrocketed from kind of go, you know, so like you can make your own path. There's no rules here when it comes to, you know, attitude and effort.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's powerful what you said too. People are going to have their own thing they're happy with. Some people are very, very happy making 5 to 10 grand a month. And if they can do that on a minimum amount of effort, in their eyes, and, take care of their families and still do everything they want to do, they'll be very happy. And then you're going to have that person that comes in, and anything short of Hall of Fame, they are not going to be satisfied. And you got to kind of meet those people where they are. Well, Jesse, you've given us a ton, man. I want to be respectful of your time. I know you got a lot going on. Two things. One, you shared with us your goal as far as producer. You're going to on pace to hit 360, and you're trying to suss out that little bit extra to hit Hall of Fame,
Yep.
which I believe that you'll do. And then, what's your goal as a team for the end of the year? Hovering right around 150 right now.
Yeah, I'd love to get us up another 100 at least. If we can jump to 250 and roll into 2022 with with some momentum, I'll take it.
Yeah, that's huge. I'll never forget seeing Ivan at the beginning of 2020 with like 300,000, and then finishing with like 1.5 million. I was like, screw you, dude.
I was just, I was just talking to him this morning, and the first time I met Ivan, so what Ivan used to do was Ivan had, all Chicago locked up, and then Ivan had mortgage protection mailers down here in Dallas Fort Worth.
Right.
And he would come down for I think a long weekend every month and just try to run as many appointments as he could. So the first time I met Ivan, he came into the office here and just sat there, and he dialed this huge stack of these that had been collecting over a month plus or whatever. And he just dialing, going through them. And here I was working Dallas all the time, and that dude came down and in a 4-day weekend or something
would write 30K.
He wrote at that time. He wrote in 3 days what I think I did in 30 days.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I am in the right place, but I'm not there yet. But if that's what's out there, and that's what's proven true to be out there, is I was like, I'm in the right spot.
Yeah. And now we got this kid. You talk about Ivan having it locked down, talking about the different kinds of leads and stuff like that. Here I got this kid who's on John Lama's team from Florida, and doesn't have any, someone giving him the secret piece, doesn't have anyone giving him this little tip or something for this area, but just working internet, and then is writing 80, 90 in my backyard when I have, when I've got some mailers and stuff locked down. I'm like, man, it makes you think. It's like, man, maybe I can give a little bit more. Maybe there's more I can do. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And it pushes you.
Yeah. I think if that's not something that's, constantly coming up in your own head, you might be in the wrong place.
Yeah. The wrong business.
Yeah.
For
always.
Sure.
Some of it's tiring, but I'm always trying to figure out what's, where can I squeeze out more without blowing up the other half of my life.
Right. I feel you. Well, hey, Jesse, thank you so much for your time, brother. I really appreciate what you've given to our group here. I always ask for our guests to give us a parting shout. Obviously, you have several years of experience. You've been a new agent before, and now being a seasoned agent. What is a piece of advice you would give to someone brand new, someone on your level, and everything in between that you think would be a blessing?
I think for me, the biggest, what I think is most important here, right? Because it's something that I have to take pretty careful account of, right? Is you got to maximize your time. Your personal schedule combined with your appointment schedule, combined with just your general life schedule. You quick backstory to center that statement, right? It's I've got a wife who works full time. I now have 2 kids. One's 4.5 in pre-K, one's 1.5 in preschool.
Okay.
right? They're not home during the day. If I'm not running appointments and I'm home, I'm there, but I'm not seeing them,
Sure.
right? If I'm running appointments in the evening, they're home, I'm not, right? But it's important that I work because the whole goal is trying to build a better future, for me and my wife and my kids by extension.
Sure.
So like there's some stuff, I posted about this on Facebook the other week. Like he took his first steps, I wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've seen that with my daughter, so no offense to my son, right? But like there's some stuff I'm gonna miss and I'm okay with that because it's a long-term play, right? But where I'm going with all of this is like I have a lot of stuff to balance, so I got to be on top of balancing it, right? So I'm sitting down with my wife every Sunday and I'm talking about what do we have personal life that week that I'm basically have to be at, right? Then I'm making a second note like what do I want to be at?
Sure.
Everything else is open for appointments, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of like where we structure that, and like she's on board with that, right? Like my wife gets kind of kicked in the face a couple times a week because I'm not there. She's finishing up her job and then taking over the kids, but I make up for it in other times. And finding your balance here is super important so you don't burn yourself out.
Sure.
Right. You got to make sure the hours you're putting into this are productive, but you got to make sure you breathe.
Mm.
I think that's real important.
Sure. Well, yeah, there's burnout can be a real thing, and burnout happens when you're not taking adequate rest, and sometimes, and that can definitely be a problem for anybody, but particularly the younger generation that feels like that they're just kind of can do as much, and then but they hit burnout too, and so you've really found that balance.
Yeah, and I think it's important, like to add on top of that, like sort of, statement 1B of things that I think are important for people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is like you gotta pay attention. Like you are your own boss, right? Like this is your own business. You're in charge of yourself, right? But you don't have to do this alone, right? Anyone else on here, all these people in some form are on your team, right? Like there's like you want them calling you for help. You want them making sure that they're figuring it out because that's the only way and it's the only way you can help.
Right.
Like, so for you new agents, like, remember, like you're in charge of yourself, but you've got all the support system and setup of FFL as a group, right? Whether it's Gabe, whether it's me, whether it's some other random agent who's not even a part of your team that you think is relevant that you want to talk to and get some guidance from, like everyone's here to help push you to be the best version of you. And you got to ask for it to make sure, you're being the best version of you.